Hey movie lovers! I'm Emily, and this is Movie Companion. Stylish, eerie, and filled with psychological tension, Last Night in Soho takes us on a haunting trip through time and identity. Released in 2021, this psychological horror thriller is directed by Edgar Wright, best known for films like Baby Driver and Shaun of the Dead. The story was co-written by Wright and Krysty Wilson-Cairns. The film stars Thomasin McKenzie as Eloise, a fashion student with a mysterious connection to the past, and Anya Taylor-Joy as the dazzling and enigmatic Sandy. Also featuring standout performances from Matt Smith and Diana Rigg in her final film role, the cast brings this haunting vision of London to life. For this episode, I'll be recapping the full plot, so consider this your spoiler warning, and then sharing my thoughts on the film's visuals, performances, and how it blends psychological horror with 1960s nostalgia. Arrival and Awkwardness. Eloise Ellie Turner, a young woman from rural Cornwall with a passion for 60s fashion and a sensitive disposition, she occasionally glimpses her deceased mother in mirrors, arrives in London brimming with dreams of becoming a designer. The city, however, proves initially abrasive. She struggles to connect with the cynical fashion students at her college, particularly her sharp-tongued roommate, Jo Costa. Feeling overwhelmed and out of place, Ellie ditches the dorm for a quiet bedsit in Soho, rented out by a stern but seemingly harmless elderly landlady, Miss Collins. Only fellow student John offers a measure of kindness. The setup immediately establishes Ellie as an outsider, marked by both her geographical displacement and her psychic sensitivity. Her love for the 60s isn't just aesthetic, it's a yearning for a seemingly more glamorous, perhaps simpler, past, a stark contrast to the harsh realities of modern London student life. The mirrors acting as portals for her mother's ghost foreshadow the deeper, more dangerous reflections to come. Finding the old bedsit feels like stepping into the past she craves, unaware it holds genuine ghosts. Dancing through time. That very first night in the bedsit, Ellie experiences an incredibly vivid dream, transporting her to the heart of the Swinging Sixties. She finds herself embodying, or perhaps just observing, the stunningly confident Sandy, an aspiring singer navigating the electric atmosphere of the Café de Paris. Ellie watches as Sandy catches the eye of Jack, a suave, slightly dangerous-looking manager who promises stardom. The dream is intoxicating, filled with the music and style Ellie adores. Waking, Ellie feels invigorated, sketches a dress inspired by Sandy, and notices a faint love bite on her own neck, a mark seemingly carried back from the dream. This is the hook, the seductive allure of the past made manifest. The dream isn't passive. Ellie feels connected, physically affected. Sandy represents everything Ellie currently is not. Bold, glamorous, desired. Jack embodies the era's charm but also carries an implicit threat. The love bite is the first truly unsettling sign that the barrier between past and present, dream and reality, is disturbingly permeable. Is Ellie just dreaming, or is she somehow linking with Sandy? Mirror Image and the Shadow Man. The dreams continue, pulling Ellie deeper into Sandy's world. She witnesses Sandy's audition, procured by Jack, and sees her return to the exact same bedsit Ellie now occupies. Captivated, Ellie begins to transform herself, dyeing her hair blonde, adopting Sandy's fashion sense, mirroring the woman in her visions. This newfound confidence lands her a job in a pub. It's here she's noticed by an unnerving, older, silver-haired gentleman who seems to recognize the Sandy emerging in Ellie. The mirroring becomes literal. Ellie isn't just inspired, she's adopting Sandy's persona, using the past as a costume for the present. This highlights themes of identity. Is Ellie finding herself or losing herself in another story? The bedsit being the same physical space across decades grounds the supernatural connection. The appearance of the silver-haired man injects a note of present-day menace, suggesting Sandy's past might have living and potentially dangerous echoes. The dream sours. The nightly visions take a dark turn. Ellie discovers the grim reality beneath Sandy's glamorous facade. Jack isn't just her manager. He's her pimp, forcing her to sleep with sleazy industry men. The dream shifts from a vibrant fantasy to a claustrophobic nightmare of exploitation and degradation. Ellie experiences Sandy's fear and helplessness as if it were her own, witnessing the charming dream curdle into something ugly and predatory. The nostalgia shatters. The film confronts the often romanticized view of the 60s, exposing the misogyny and exploitation that could lie beneath the stylish surface. Ellie's psychic connection becomes a curse, forcing her to bear witness to Sandy's trauma. The initial empowerment Ellie felt mimicking Sandy now feels like a horrifying trap, linking her fate to Sandy's suffering. Ghosts of Soho. The horror refuses to stay confined to sleep. Ellie starts hallucinating disturbing figures, shadowy, leering men she recognizes from Sandy's experiences, invading her waking life. These ghosts appear in reflections, in crowds, even lashing out at her in the university library, causing a public breakdown. Terrified, Ellie believes Sandy was murdered by Jack and tries reporting it to the police, but her fragmented visions and lack of concrete evidence make her sound unstable. John remains supportive, but Ellie grows increasingly frantic and paranoid, haunted by the violent past. She also grows suspicious of the silver-haired man, believing him to be Jack. This section plunges into full psychological horror. The past isn't just echoing, it's aggressively intruding, manifesting as spectral accusers or attackers. It explores how trauma can haunt, blurring lines between psychological distress and supernatural phenomena. Ellie's isolation intensifies as her credible reality crumbles, making her rely solely on her terrifying visions. The police scene underscores her helplessness. How do you report a crime witnessed across time? Unmasking the Past. Ellie confronts the silver-haired man, Lindsay, at the pub, accusing him of being Jack. He denies it, revealing he was actually an undercover vice officer in the 60s who knew Sandy and pitted her situation, but confirms she wasn't murdered. Or at least, not by Jack in the way Ellie imagined. Panicked by this contradiction and the escalating hauntings, Ellie decides to flee London. As she informs Miss Collins, the landlady chillingly reveals she knows about the police visit. The nice police lady came to check up on me, and then drops the bombshell. She is Sandy. The vision Ellie saw wasn't Sandy being murdered. It was Sandy killing Jack in self-defense when he threatened her. Furthermore, she admits she subsequently lured the men Jack pimped her to back to the room and murdered them, hiding their bodies within the house itself. She's drugged Ellie's tea, planning to silence her permanently. A brilliant twist that reframes everything. The victim becomes the avenger. Miss Collins/Sandy isn't just a survivor, she's a killer who took brutal revenge. The ghosts haunting Ellie weren't necessarily accusing Jack, but perhaps pleading for release from their own killer, Sandy. The narrative cleverly played on tropes of female victimhood before revealing Sandy's complex, violent agency. Ellie's connection wasn't just to Sandy's suffering, but to her rage and her crimes. Inferno and Absolution. A struggle erupts. Ellie accidentally starts a fire. John arrives, drawn by the commotion, but Miss Collins/Sandy stabs him. As the fire spreads, Ellie hallucinates the terrifying ascent up the stairs with the younger Sandy pursuing her. She kicks her down, then retreats to her room, where the spectral victims now appear clearly, begging Ellie to kill Sandy/Miss Collins. Ellie refuses. Miss Collins enters, seeing the spirits herself. As police sirens wail outside, she tries to end her own life. But Ellie, now understanding the depths of Sandy's pain and desperation, stops her. Sandy urges Ellie to save herself and the injured John, choosing to remain in the burning building, consumed by her past. The climax is a literal and metaphorical inferno. Past and present collide violently. Ellie's final act isn't vengeance, but empathy. She refuses the spirit's demands, recognizing Sandy as more than just a monster. Sandy's final choice is ambiguous: suicide, acceptance of fate, or perhaps a final act of control. Her demise in the house where she both suffered and enacted her revenge provides a grimly fitting closure to her story arc. Haunted success. Sometime later, Ellie achieves the success she dreamed of, showcasing her Sandy-inspired designs at a fashion show, watched proudly by her grandmother and a recovered John. Yet, the past lingers. She sees her mother smiling in a mirror, a comforting presence, but then Sandy also appears, blowing her a kiss. The connection remains, a haunting reminder of the darkness woven into her inspiration. Ellie gets her happy ending, but it's irrevocably tinged by the trauma she endured and witnessed. Success is built on a foundation inspired by Sandy's life, both the glamour and the horror. The final ghostly appearances suggest that while Ellie has survived and processed, she hasn't entirely escaped. Sandy's kiss could be seen as gratitude, acknowledgement, or a final, unsettling claim on Ellie's life and art. The past is never truly buried. In Last Night in Soho, director Edgar Wright takes an audacious leap into psychological horror, trading in his signature quick-cut comedy and kinetic stylization for a slow-burning, neon-lit descent into madness and memory. The result is a film that's as visually dazzling as it is narratively uneven, an evocative homage to 1960s London that never quite reconciles its love for the era with the nightmare it ultimately unveils. At the center of the story is Eloise Ellie Turner, Thomasin McKenzie, a wide-eyed fashion student with a deep reverence for the swinging 60s. Escaping the Cornwall countryside and memories of her late mother, Ellie arrives in London full of dreams. But her time at the prestigious London College of Fashion is quickly marred by social alienation and a venomously toxic roommate, Jo Costa. Longing for escape, Ellie rents a bedsit from the mysterious Miss Collins, Diana Rigg, in her final performance, and it's there that the real story begins to unravel. By night, Ellie slips into vivid, almost hallucinatory dreams in which she inhabits the life of Sandy, a magnetic Anya Taylor-Joy, a confident blonde singer in 1960s Soho who is swept up by a suave manager named Jack, Matt Smith. At first, Ellie is enraptured, inspired by Sandy's glamour and the era's electric aesthetic. But as the nights wear on, her dreams sour into something more sinister. Sandy's aspirations are twisted into exploitation, and Ellie's waking life becomes increasingly haunted by ghostly visions, uncertainty, and a descent into psychological terror. Wright's meticulous attention to visual detail is on full display. With Chung Hoon-chung's lush cinematography, the film bathes in bold colors, mirror reflections, and sleek transitions between timelines that feel like magic tricks. The soundtrack, loaded with 60s hits from Dusty Springfield and Peter and Gordon, creates a hypnotic audio-visual experience that practically seduces the viewer into its reverie. In fact, it's this overwhelming style and mood that elevates the film beyond its flawed mechanics. Because for all its aesthetic seduction, Last Night in Soho falters when it comes to its narrative ambitions. What begins as a stylish psychological mystery gradually gives way to a repetitive, muddled horror finale that's more chaotic than cathartic. The ghosts of Soho, initially eerie and evocative, become less frightening as they're overused. Revelations arrive with theatrical flourish, but little emotional weight. And the moral pivot, asking us to sympathize with a character who minutes earlier tried to murder our protagonist, leaves a strange aftertaste that the script never quite redeems. Still, the performances carry emotional heft. McKenzie walks a delicate line between fragility and growing agency, while Taylor-Joy delivers a performance that feels both glamorous and tragic. Matt Smith brings just the right level of charming menace to Jack, though he vanishes from the narrative a little too early. Diana Rigg is both steely and sympathetic as Miss Collins, anchoring the final act with gravitas even when the plot asks her to pivot from victim to villain. There's a lot Last Night in Soho tries to be, a supernatural thriller, a commentary on nostalgia, a feminist reimagining of noir tropes. And while it doesn't always land these aspirations, it's never uninteresting. It's a film about the danger of romanticizing the past, about how the glamour of yesteryear can mask cycles of abuse and trauma. Yet, paradoxically, Wright is also enamored with that very aesthetic, and the film never fully escapes its own nostalgic obsession. In the end, Last Night in Soho is a haunting ride worth taking. Flawed, yes, but compelling in its daring. It's a stylish ghost story soaked in sorrow and sequins, one that flickers brilliantly even as it loses its way in the shadows. That wraps up this episode of Movie Companion. If you've enjoyed it, please follow or subscribe so you never miss what's next. I'd love to hear your thoughts or recommendations. Feel free to share them. Thanks for spending some time with me, and I'll catch you in the next one.